Hello everyone and welcome to EdjuristTV, your one-stop shop for conversation on law and education. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Bathon, and it's been a while. It's been a while, my friends. I'm sorry. I apologize. Been quite busy here at the college. I actually have some cool stuff I'm pretty close to announcing. There may be a new show on the horizon. I know, EdjuristTV. I'll keep it going in some capacity, even though it's been few and far between lately. I apologize. But I have some new and cool stuff coming up, some very Kentucky-specific stuff. I'm really loving it here in the Commonwealth, and we have a lot of very cool stuff going on. And so I'm excited about all of that, and I apologize for being gone so long, but look to see a lot more of me on video in the very near future. Today, it's that time of year again. I like to, as I do the yearbook cases, here is last year's yearbook of education law, and that's probably backwards. I don't know how to fix that. Anyway, I got to read all the cases that apply to students every year and put them all in the yearbook. So this year, again, I'm reading all the cases, and today I'm here to talk about cases that have to do with students and expression rights. Okay, so we're going to run through all of the 2009 cases that deal with students and expression rights and give you a little bit of an overview of what's happening. Big picture, schools are continuing to just win. Of all of the cases that we're going to talk about today, schools won at least a partial victory in all of them. That's a very good batting average. So you students out there watching this, be careful when you bring these lawsuits. Your likelihood of success may be quite low. That said, students, not really bringing the thunder this year. Some cases that are interesting, but nothing that really blew my socks off at the level of creativity, like a few years ago when we had the Morse v. Frederick case with the bong hits for Jesus. During the parade, the Olympics, the news stations, quite creative. This year, I'm not feeling the love. I'm not feeling the love, students. So, in the future, if you're going to violate these expression rights, go ahead and up your game a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting for me and all these other education law folks around the country when we have to read these cases. So let's get rolling. First big topic is all about school policies, especially as they relate to student dress. So our first case we're going to roll off the line here is Dempsey versus Alston. This is 966 A second, page 1. And this is just your basic dress code case. So if you're out there, you're saying, how does dress code work in the law? Go look up this case, see how the court analyzed it, and this will give you a very good understanding of how we deal with dress codes in this country. School adopts a dress code, parent goes ape, because feels like all of my constitutional rights are being violated, wanted to wear actual shirts that say my constitutional rights are being violated. So a quite aggressive parent against the dress code brings it to court, obviously, and school wins. School had a pretty clear dress code. There was no articulable, individualized expression violation, and so it was quite a simple case, but a very basic takeaway dress code case to show how schools can win in these instances. Next one. All right, so you go from dress code policies, and we'll come back to that a little bit, to time, place, and manner restrictions, where you're restricting particular expression activities on the front end. So in this case, school has, in this case is Morgan versus Plano Independent School District. Big year for Texas this year. Lots of expression cases coming out of, the Lone Star State down there. I don't know what's happening, but certainly schools and students are not exactly on the same page with expression rights. Anyway, okay, out of Texas, Plano, Texas, school district has a policy prohibiting the distribution of literature in the school. They give it a couple of times, a little bit before school, a little bit during lunch. You can do a little distribution of literature. The rest of the day, though, no distribution of literature. Students want to pass out some Bible passages, so a little bit of religion in this one. Also, bottom line, the court backs up the school here again because the school has content neutral time, place, and manner restrictions. Okay, so they're not discriminating against any one particular viewpoint or religion in this instance, and they're permitting the distribution of materials during non-curricular hours like before school, during lunch, stuff like that. So school, your takeaway here is if I have some content neutral time, place, and manner restrictions, and I permit sometimes for students to engage in some protected activities, you are fine and dandy to go. Next one. Oh, this is a fun one. This one is out of California, I think. Let me check. No, not California. This is another Texas case. Okay, I don't know how this happened, but it was in Texas apparently, where a student wanted to wear a John Edwards t-shirt. Okay, so these are cases, 2009 cases that would have been coming out of the 2006 to 2008 period. Obviously, you know, we had a little bit of an election in 2008. John Edwards was running for the Democratic primary nomination. Student wants to wear a John Edwards shirt. School has a policy. School policy is no printed messages on shirts. All right, so here again, we have this front-end school policy that is content viewpoint neutral, and it's not discriminating against any one particular type of content. Here, political speech, for instance. And so again, the school is going to win this case. Even though John Edwards for president is about as protective of expression as it gets, you still have this prior restraint kind of content neutral, viewpoint neutral policy that is going to consistently win these cases. So school officials, if you're watching this, boom, you should be taken away. Wow, victory, victory, victory. We have content neutral, viewpoint neutral policies that are not overbroad in place. We're going to win. Let me get to the overbroad issue. So that one was Palmer versus Waxahachie Independent School District. And if I mispronounced that wrong and you're from that area, please let me know. All right. So that was the John Edwards shirt. One other one I want to get to before we talk overbroad is A-Train case out of West Virginia, not very far from here, just across the mountains. Kid gets into trouble in, I think this was Huntington, West Virginia, shoots somebody. Anyway, kid's in a lot of trouble. The kid's nickname is A-Train. Okay, so then the kids in the rest of the school who sort of know this kid then adopt this free A-Train kind of this little protest that they have. Okay, school then adopts a policy saying no messages that relate to the A-Train situation because that is being disruptive of the educational environment. Okay, so they're regulating on the front side here, no free A-Train messages. A week or two later, kids coming out of the cafeteria has a free A-Train shirt or something on, and then is obviously punished for that, then brings the lawsuit. Now we have to determine whether or not this kind of regulation on the front end is permissible. And of course, you know what's happening. The school's going to win here again because they have real evidence of disruption happening in their school. And so that front end regulation, even though in this case it's very specific, was permitted by the courts. Now, last one I want to talk about in this zone of cases. This is Miller versus Penn Manor School District, and this is an interesting case. Actually, this is one of the lack of creativity this year. This is one of the more creative shirts that we have in play. So this student wears a t-shirt that has images of handguns on it, and language, I think it was on the back, that said that the student had the authorization to hunt terrorists. All right, so the student was billing themselves as a terrorist hunter. So, okay, a little bit creative. I like it a little. You know, I get what's happening coming out post 9/11, I suppose. Anyway, okay, so obviously the school is not loving a shirt with pictures of handguns on it. And of course, I don't blame them. Also, I think there was language of killing terrorists. And obviously, the school is not going to love the language regarding the killing of other human beings. So, of course, the school is going to ban. Now, that particular shirt was banned and the court upheld it. But the court did strike down a couple of other provisions in the school's policy as being overbroad. And let me bring those in here. So the school had a policy saying anything that is a, quote, anything that is a distraction to the education environment could be prohibited. Court said, no, that's a bit too broad of a policy because that's not really referencing exactly what came out of the Tinker Court. And so a little bit too broad. That is struck down. Second one that is struck down is the district was going to ban on the front end anything that sought to establish the supremacy of a particular religious denomination, sect, or point of view. Again, the court said this is probably overbroad and may interfere with free exercise rights, and so also struck that down. Here's your takeaway. This is the last case. This case, Miller versus Penn Manor School District, 588 F sub second 606. Your takeaway, school officials, is that you got all these cases. I just listed all the ones that dealt with these prior restraint kind of things in 2009. And you can see that the schools are consistently winning here. So you do not need these ultra broad policies on the front end. These policies that come straight off of the Tinker language, saying that we are going to prohibit things that are disruptive in the particular way that Tinker lays out, lewd or vulgar in the way that Bethel v. Frazier lays out, and promote drug use in the way that Morse lays out. That very narrow articulation of school policies seems to be winning consistently when it hits the courts. And so I really think that you do not need these super broad regulatory policies on the front side because the courts are going to back you up when it gets there. That's what we've been seeing the last couple of years now. This administrative discretion era that we're in, that's what I'm calling it now, is really has the courts just backing up the school officials most of the time, unless you get wild and put in really these broad policies that the courts really can't support. That's our takeaway. Couple of other cases of interest this year, like nearly every year for the past, 20-some years, we have Confederate flag, shirt, and other means of expression cases this year. And in both cases, the student is going to lose. In one of them, I find it quite interesting, and so I'm going to take a little bit more time on that. First one that's not super interesting to me is out of Missouri, B.W.A. versus Farmington R7 School District. I have family that live in Farmington. Not surprised to see this coming out of Farmington, Missouri. Just saying. All right, so fairly white district, just a few black students, but some very, very bad stuff happening. In fact, there was an incident where a white student urinated on a black student and said that that is what black people deserve. I mean, holy camole. So with that kind of racial tension background, the school had absolutely zero trouble banning any references to the Confederate flag. And so this follows in our normal tradition here of if you have any history of racial tension, courts are going to back up the banning of the Confederate flag. And really the second case is just right along the same lines. It is AM versus Cash. I think this is maybe our third Texas case that came down the line here. It is. Here we have two girls that bring Confederate flag purses to the school. I mean, seriously, you're going out, you're looking at purses, you're thinking, oh, you know, here's Gucci, here's Coach. No, I don't love those. Instead, I'm going to go for this Confederate flag purse. Come on, girls. You know better than that. Anyway, so same kind of thing happens. The school takes the time to articulate the racial tension. Just like in the last case, again, there's lots of evidence of racial tension, particularly surrounding athletics. For some reason, athletics really seems to bring out the racial tension in students in schools. And so there was plenty of evidence, once again, to ban the Confederate flag purses. Craziness. All right, last. Oh, no, I want to do be happy, not gay. Interesting little case that happened here. We've had lots of cases of be happy, not gay kinds of language, okay? Interesting little case coming out of Illinois, Zamnick versus Indian Prairie School District. I do know where Indian Prairie School District is as well. Nice little suburban district outside of Chicago. Interesting case here. The be happy, not gay language was prohibited on the basis of conflicting with the school's mission of tolerance. We've seen that kind of play out before, and that sort of follows the path. Interesting little twist on this case that may have repercussions down the line is the student was permitted to wear a shirt that said be happy, be straight, because it did not have a negative message. It had, in the court's eyes, a positive message. Positive in the most narrow meaning of that word. Anyway, because it did not have that negative message and did not directly conflict with the school's mission regarding tolerance, the court was going to uphold it. And on top of that, the administration in Indian Prairie really did not fight it at all. Now, I certainly think that that could have been fought more aggressively by the school district, and I would have liked to have seen them do that, especially following on the lines of the Harper case a few years ago out of California, which picked up on the second aspect of Tinker, which was the no kind of harassing language component of Tinker, which we never really remember or talk about. Anyway, I thought we could have had a nice little fight there. The school district chose not to go down that road, and by choosing not to go down that road, this case, this Zamnick versus Indian Prairie, may establish some precedent here that you can wear these anti-homosexual messages as long as you remove the anti part, the negative part, and only wear messages that promote heterosexuality, even though the clear intention of that is being harassing to homosexual students. I still think that, it's an interesting little case. I don't know what'll come of it, but keep that one on the horizon, folks, especially you EdLaw folks out there, to watch and see how this positive message toward heterosexuality plays out over the next few years. All right, interesting one. Cool. Let's get into a little bit of internet speech, and then we will wrap up. We had two internet-based speech cases this year, 2009. Both of them quite interesting, in my opinion. First, let's do Donninger. This case is not really finished yet. This has been going on now for a few years. The Avery Donninger case out of Connecticut, where this is the douchebags case, if you saw it in the headlines. This class secretary, very good student, writes on her blog that the school administration were douchebags. In retaliation for that, the school administration prohibits her from being class secretary, also prohibits some t-shirts. It's a little bit messy. And that's why I think it's going on so long. There's so much happening here. Anyway, this year we had an interesting case. We did give, the District Court of Connecticut did give the principal and superintendent qualified immunity on the issue of prohibiting the student from running for class secretary. And so that sort of limits her options going forward on that. But this case is still not done. The t-shirt issue is still sort of surviving. The issue of wanting to wear t-shirts supporting the student for class secretary going forward. We have to see how that's going to play out. So Donninger is not done. Keep an eye on it. We just had another episode of the case this year. The more interesting one, in my opinion, and it's not super interesting, but what I find interesting about it is, this is Barnett versus Tipton County Board of Education out of Tennessee. What's interesting coming out of this one is student created a MySpace profile of the principal, okay? And the MySpace profile was quite lewd and all about putting the principal, the fake principal created on the MySpace profile, in relationship, in a sexual relationship perhaps with some of the other students or teachers at the school. So, you know, clearly stuff we're going to ban. But what I find interesting is how the court went about banning it and prohibiting it. It said that this was not a parody and thus not speech. I find that really interesting. They could have clearly went down the Fraser path here and banned it under that angle. Although pulling Doninger back, who knows where it's at, but Doninger is really still debating this issue of whether we can ban student off-campus speech under the Fraser domain, okay, under the lewd, vulgar, plainly offensive context. And what's interesting about that case and this one is that both of these courts are reluctant to do that. We have clearly been banning off-campus speech under the Tinker disruption analysis for years, and we're going to continue to do that. But the Fraser one has really presented some problems, and I don't know how it's going to play out. It's certainly something to watch, and probably it would be awesome law review articles. There's probably a couple out there already. And again, here we see the Western District of Tennessee purposefully avoiding it, in my opinion, and going with this, it's not speech on the front end, because there was no like articulable message that was protectable, because this was just nonsense on the part of the kid, more or less. And so I find that interesting. I find that to be a bit of a stretch relative to where they could have been with Fraser. But I do think also this Barnett case could be one that other courts begin to follow suit. Because judges so frequently don't know what to do with this internet speech, I think more and more we could see them classifying it as not speech in the first place, not even capable of being protected, and thus capable of being regulated by the districts. Watch to see if we don't go further down that path. I just see this case as really being representative of how judges who don't understand all this internet speech, you know, process in their head what all of this means. So anyway, interesting little case to read and to follow. Last case, and I want to bring it back home with this case. This is Corrales versus Bennett, 9th Circuit. You had some Latino students, middle school students, leaving school to go to a protest rally for immigration. A few years ago, you remember immigration was a very big deal in California. Still sort of is, but we had several protests going on a few years ago. Students walked out of school to go join the protests. Now, there's some debate about the facts of what happens next. The principal, upon them coming back to school, was clearly angry, may have said some bad things, we don't know. Then was going to require them to pay a fine and lose year-in privileges, which amounted to a trip to Disneyland. Anyway, a couple of these students were apparently pretty good students, one in particular, and was not used to being in trouble. So she didn't react well to the discipline happening, and committed suicide later that night, left a suicide note, which I think is interesting. The suicide note by the student Anthony said this: "I just want to tell you that I love you guys and I'll miss you, and please tell this to all of my family. I killed myself because I have too many problems. Tell my teachers they're the best, and tell the principal he is a mother bleep." I think that this really needs to bring it home for us, okay? What we've seen in 2009 is consistently upholding the school's position, okay? And again, here in this case, Corrales versus Bennett, the school wins again, okay? There's no liability found against the principal in this case. But that said, even though the courts have been consistently giving school districts very much freedom in terms of how to regulate student expression, you know, that's one part of the world, the legal ramifications, but the ethical and human part of this is still not gone. And so, school administrators, if you're watching this, what I really want you to take away is that don't forget that people's lives are always at stake here. Your decisions about banning all of this student expression, and clearly you have a lot of freedom to do so from the courts at the moment, still has implications for the kids and their mental development, how the kids interact with their parents and other school and other students in the school. So just keep all of that in mind. You know, I don't want you taking away from this video that you can just go out and do whatever you want to do, school officials, because you still can't, okay? These are real kids that have real issues that really are growing into their own kind of personalities, their own way of interacting with the world, and in particular the government. And so I think we need to be cautious about how much freedom the courts have given us in using all of that. I don't think that we should be doing that in most cases. So that's my bottom line takeaway. 2009, interesting year on a few fronts. Nothing that really blew me away in terms of student expression, but some stuff to watch for going forward. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. You should see some more of these coming. We got student discipline probably coming. We got some religion cases we could talk about. Harassment cases. There's a ton of harassment cases every year nowadays. And it's really getting quite extensive. And so talking about what's happening there could be interesting. So watch for those videos in the coming days. And it was great chatting with you all.